Welcome to the Put on Waivers Media Group, home of the Put on Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Student Body Rights USC podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, and as always, I am podcasting about the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California, PORSB on my Twitter handle. So check me out there. We have a guest on our show today, fresh back from Minnesota. Big loss for USC. Just not a great performance for the Trojans. Here with us is Connor Morrissette, Inside Troy and Peristyle Podcast. Connor, how you doing today?
Doing well, Dwayne. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, let's just jump into the hot water real quick, because I know everybody's talking about the quarterback and the whole situation, whereas people are talking about maybe trying to change quarterbacks. So, from the fans who I talk to, who text the show, they want what they're looking for is more of a package, maybe each half for Jaden Mayava, because for the most part, Lincoln Riley has had that RPO action in his offense for years. You can just go start from with Kyler for Baker. Like it's not a believable play when Miller Moss does it because they don't feel like he's gonna run. So, is that something that you feel like is realistic, or something that is out of the realm of it? Because I know that at this point in the season, I don't think we can expect, unless Miller Moss play plummeted to the point where we can go really south. But I don't think a replacement. I think it's more of a change of pace.
I understand why people would look to that, but just for me, Miller Moss is so far down the list of concerns, and really he's not even a big concern for me. I think if you had the NFL draft tomorrow and anyone was eligible, regardless, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, would USC have any receivers or any tight ends drafted? I don't think so at this point. Brendan Rice had a great year last year, and he ends up going in the 7th round. The point I'm trying to make is I don't think he has a lot of help around him. And so I get it. Maybe someone more mobile would stress the defense a little bit more, but the guy is under constant pressure. His receivers have underachieved to date so far. I think that Michigan game, he was exceptional outside of the one bad throw, which we need to acknowledge, the pick 6.
Yeah,
he played really, really good football, and a lot of pro scouts and people in the NFL draft space moved him up their board after that. So I just feel like you have to trust Lincoln Riley's evaluation of the quarterback and his plan. That's the one thing that through his ups and downs, he's consistently done exceptionally well. He's probably the best person in the world at evaluating quarterback play. And he's never been a guy to play 2 quarterbacks, so I don't anticipate that happening. When Moss did run the ball against Wisconsin, he rushed for a touchdown. He had a couple nice runs. He did almost get concussed on one of them, so that's a concern, and that might be why they went away from it a little bit. But when he did run against Wisconsin, it looked pretty solid, so maybe they start to do that a little bit more. I just think if you're a fan and you're frustrated with USC, the quarterback spot, that's not really the place to put your frustration right now when Moss is not being protected at all. The receivers haven't been as good as we thought. Defensively, they're dealing with some injuries right now, so the depth has taken a big hit, and that's why Minnesota had some success late in that game. There are many, many other things to critique, and the quarterback for me, it's not even on my list of critiques. I think Moss has been great.
Josh Henson and the offensive line, that's something that people are definitely talking about it, and it's definitely a concern. It's to the point where they're so slow off the ball, they're not even getting a chance to take a penalty on some of these guys. They're getting a running head start on Miller at times in this game. Is there any are we just staying with this same kind of 5 up front, or are they? Is it possible you can see movement there? Do they have somebody who could possibly play center if they want to make a move there and then kick out Monheim? Is that those things a possibility? Because I just don't know if they can survive with the way they're pass blocking right now.
It's possible, but after the game, Riley said he felt like the offensive line against Minnesota played well enough to win. So there were no indications from him that there's going to be a change.
Mm,
And if they do move Jonah, then you do have the hole at center, like you
yeah.
mentioned. And behind him, it's Gino Quinones, who's coming off of a big knee injury, who, when we watched him snap at practice the other day, had two go over Miller's head. And then it's a walk on and Killian O'Connor, who I actually really like. And if they really did think about moving Jonah, I'd actually be okay with Killian coming in. I like what I've seen from him.
Okay.
But again, it's a walk on, and if one thing goes south, then Riley knows he'll get hammered. Like, how could you put in this walk on? So the options aren't really that great. Maybe Tobias
Mm,
Raymond could come in and help out Mason Murphy. Maybe Murphy goes to the bench after making that mistake against Minnesota. That's sort of the problem. They haven't recruited well enough, and Riley wasn't left with a whole lot, of course. But two things can be true: he hasn't recruited well enough, and he wasn't left with a whole lot. People look at last year and say, "Oh, well, you can't bring linemen out of the transfer portal. That didn't work." But Emmanuel Pregnon is probably the best
yeah.
offensive lineman on USC right now. Him and Monheim have been pretty good. He was from the transfer portal. The fact that they didn't bring in anyone, especially at the tackle spot, is still baffling to me. So they do have some changes they could make, but pretty much they got to sleep in this bed that they've made for themselves, because they just don't have a lot of talent at that offensive tackle spot. And we all knew this coming into the season. So I wish there was some magic fix, but there's nothing that I see realistically that really I think would work 100%. Because if you move Monheim, then you have a hole at center, and Tobias Raymond's pretty unproven at right tackle, so maybe he's better. But there's nothing that's like, oh, that'll 100% lead to better offensive line play. They just got to play better.
Yeah, and also too, I mean, is there a possibility to maybe change the formation a little bit where you go? I mean, we keep a little 12 personnel where you can keep a couple of tight ends in to keep to help out with some, because you can still. I mean, I think if you keep some tight ends in, then you'd be able to maybe get the ball out, take a shot down the field. I know, like it seemed like on Miller's last fumble or interception that he was trying to take a shot. He saw a single. He saw like one safety back there. He tried to take a shot, and he ended up fumbling the football. Is there any? I mean, that was something where I think Lincoln could probably do in this, and they might need to do this weekend because I mean, say what you want about Penn State, with that front line is not going to be one to mess with here.
Riley said last week that he was asked about that, and he said we do some of it, but then he said he doesn't love doing it all the time because it limits you on offense. Like, if you just have a tight end to block, then that's one less player that runs a route, and the defense has to worry about one less guy. So I thought that was a pretty revealing comment from him. But to your point about Penn State, his hand might be forced this weekend when you're going up against a really good front, and the offensive line has had the trouble that it's had. I don't know how you don't play more 12 personnel and just help out some of these struggling offensive linemen. I mean, it's not just the edge rushers for Penn State who are good. James Franklin said today that the interior rusher for them, I forget his name, is one of the best interior rushers that he's ever coached. So
Yeah.
they're going to be thrown into the fire again. I think it's going to be an all hands on deck week. I'm excited to check out practice on Wednesday because we can see a little bit of the first team offensive line, what that looks like, because yeah, they need to make some changes. And if they were playing a team like Wisconsin or even a team like Minnesota at home coming up this week, you could probably get away with just doing what they've been doing, and it would probably work out. I think if you play Minnesota at home, you probably win that game. But going up against Penn State, that changes things. So I don't know if there's going to be any formation change from an offensive line perspective, but you could certainly have more 12 personnel. You could certainly have more plays where a running back helps in pass protection, because pretty clearly through these first 5 games, when the going's gotten tough for USC, the pass protection has been a big issue.
Yeah, no question about it. You mentioned the receivers and everything like that, and they've kind of underwhelmed a little bit. I think that I think Jacoby has been pretty good. Clearly, Zachariah has the yips or something. I mean, it's really been a tough season for him. I think he fair caught a kickoff that went right to him, where he had a chance to return last week, and I think in that first drive, I mean, I know it's only one play, and people say it's one play, get over it. But like that, I'm not sure what the view was from your vantage point, but it seemed like he had a lot of space to roam if he caught that ball in the first drive, on that third down. So that was a killer. That was a killer play there. What are your thoughts about Zachariah Branch? And I think a guy who is getting separation, who I do think is a big matchup problem for other teams, is Deuce Robinson, who seems to be the guy who really has shown great hands and the ability to separate.
Totally. With Zachariah Branch, it's good, I think, that Riley continues to show trust in him. And even after he had that big drop, he's still out there. But you're right. He absolutely has the yips. Maybe if he was benched, would he respond to that? And that could get him to snap out of it. I'm not totally sure, but I think right now, what choice do they have? He's probably the guy with the highest ceiling in that receiver room outside of maybe Jacoby Lane. Like, you got to keep going to him, I think, but it's getting tougher and tougher to defend him with some of the mistakes he's made as a return man and as a receiver. And I don't really have any explanation for it because
Yeah.
he was so good as a returner last year. So the fact that he hasn't really done much outside of that one LSU return, I'm not sure. And I mean, let's face it, last year as a receiver, he was okay, maybe even a little bit subpar. He didn't really get open too much downfield. They didn't really ask him to do a lot of that. So maybe he's having trouble adjusting to this new role. But I mean, I thought he played really well against Michigan and as a receiver. And of course, he has that bad drop against Minnesota. But I wish I had some magic answer for why he's not playing
Yeah.
well. It just hasn't been what people expected. And it's tough for him when he was a 5-star receiver. He's in his second year. You look around college football and you have Ryan Williams at Alabama doing what he's doing and Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State doing what he's doing. I don't think it's fair to Zachariah to expect him to play as well as those guys, but it has to be tough for him when he has these major expectations and he's not answering them. So I don't wonder. I feel like it has to be a mental thing with him as well. And, there's just a lot of pressure on these guys. So I wish I had the magic answer there, but he again, like the offensive line, he just needs to play better.
Yeah, and I think it's, and when you watch, we have a show on our channel where we look at coaches film, and like the defense react. It's hard to take him off the field because the defense clearly reacts to him being on the field, and he helps his teammates get open. So it's difficult to like just say, people say bench him, but it's like it does hurt the offense when you put him on the bench because he is dynamic. Once he catches the football, and hopefully for USC he starts doing that again. Deuce, I think. I mean, I really like him, especially especially they're using him a lot when they get into the red zone. I think they could use him even more. I do like what I'm seeing from him. What are your thoughts about how he's having his season right now?
Yeah, I'd like to see him get some more targets as well. And I'm trying to pull up the USC target list right here. I can get to it in a second, but
Yeah,
he has a touchdown in 3 straight games, which is good. I have a hard time blaming him for that interception at the end of the game from Moss. Like, that was just, you got to make a play, and Moss took a chance and he got burned. I mean, desperate times call for desperate measures. So
yeah,
nothing really with either of those guys. I mean, if anything, you could maybe get mad at Riley for the play call. Could they have run one more short one and then taken a shot at the end zone? But either way, we can move on to next week. I like what I've seen from Deuce a lot. I think now it's just the consistency with him, and he's a red zone weapon. Clearly, can he be more of a weapon outside the red zone? That's sort of where he can take the next step. But one of these guys needs to really emerge as a consistent, like, the floor for them is 5 catches every game. And it's sort of been up and down where Lane has this huge game against Wisconsin, and then he starts off well against Minnesota, but then kind of goes away. And Moss likes to spread the ball around, but I do think it would really help this offense if there was a clear alpha number 1 receiver who, when the times got tough, you could really rely on. Sometimes, it's good to have this depth, but one guy establishing himself as the top guy, I think, would really help this offense. And fans, for whatever reason, don't like when I say that, but I think having a pecking order, I mean, look at the NFL. Like, when you need a big play, like, the Cowboys go to CeeDee Lamb, and when you need a big play, the Bengals go to Jamar Chase. Like, having that top option makes a big difference, and USC doesn't really have one right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I know that you recruit all these kids, you tell them they're going to play. So, like, with the wide receiver rotation, I kind of get it, but at some point, like, you might need to slow that rotation down and get people in there who really can get the job done. As far as Lincoln goes, do you feel like, I mean, you're from the New England area, right? Yeah. So you've seen Belichick like 1 week 50 times he's throwing the football. And you see 1 week where I remember they had a game at Buffalo where they didn't throw the ball. They threw the ball 1 time, and they still beat the Bills. Like, do you feel like this is Lincoln is is his offense his way, or like does he lose like the game feel, as I call it, where like, hey, where Marks has run the ball is killing them with the run. Let's just keep handing it off. I mean, PJ Fleck made a comment that even when they were running the ball well, we knew they really wanted to throw it. So we just kind of like not baiting him in the throw, but we're just watching for the long pass because we knew they wanted to do it.
Maybe a little bit. I just think Riley believes that when he throws the ball, he's such a good offensive mind that most of the time he'll be able to scheme someone open. And as long as the pass protection holds up, there will be an open receiver for Moss. And against a team like Minnesota, when Moss was protected, there were openings, and that was proven right. So yes, they probably should have run the ball more when you're averaging 7 yards a carry. There are some questions about the pass protection with the offensive line, but I also understand where Riley's coming from, where his offense has been pretty prolific and pretty damn good these last few years. And if his quarterback has time, which he hasn't in some key moments, guys are usually open. So
Yeah.
he kind of lost the feel for it a little bit. I felt like in that fourth quarter, I just have a hard time hammering him when USC, they have a chance to go up by 2 scores in the fourth quarter. They're at the Minnesota 35-yard line. If they just don't mess
Yeah.
up, they probably get a field goal, go up by 10. That changes everything. And what happens? Mason Murphy gets beat and they fumble, or the interception happens, not a fumble. It kind of looked like a fumble. And then everything kind of goes to hell. So I definitely get the criticism with him, but to me, I have more criticisms with him as the general manager than as the coach. It hasn't been perfect, his offensive play calls, but I mean, if you just execute on that last drive, go up by 10, they probably win that game.
Yeah, and even after, and the play that people keep talking about, or keep missing, is even after the Zacharias Branch drop. If the field goal's made, that makes that makes a big difference in the game as well. Let's see here we got. So the defense, I don't have much to say about the defense because I just look at how many points they give up. I don't even care about like the missed tackles hurt, and I understand that. I understand that he is working. The deck that D'Anton Lynn is working with isn't perfect. They're doing the best they can with what they have, and they've played to a level where they've never been. I don't think they've ever cost a team a game yet. So as far as the defense goes, do you think that he just gets that pass for the year as far as like some of the missed tackles, some of the rushing stats that they're giving up, because they don't really have the pieces that you need to really stop the run at a high level?
I don't think I can give him a pass for the year, but if he continues to do what he's doing, to your point, it wasn't great against Minnesota. They probably had the most success running the ball that they have all season in the Big Ten for sure.
Yeah.
So that's not great, but like in that game, Anthony Lucas goes out in the fourth quarter. You don't have Barry Alexander. You don't have Eric Gentry, 2 of USC's best run defenders. And Alexander, of course, gone for the season now. And honestly, Gentry could be as well. So that really hurts. It's tough to fault him, though, when he only gives up the 24 points, and they were a millimeter away from only giving up 17 in regulation in that game. So I think everyone in the USC, like who's a fan of them, that's sort of the view on it. And I think that's the right view. Like, yes, the defense isn't perfect. Yes, the missed tackles were high. The Russian defense is a concern. But if you give up 24 points to Minnesota and Lincoln Riley's your head coach, you should be able to outscore them. And that just didn't happen. So it's a concern of mine, but it's like very low on the list. If it continues to get worse, this defense, because they don't have the depth and because they're just playing these fierce Big Ten opponents week in and week out, the travel, like I could see this defense kind of slowly slipping because they don't have a lot of this depth, and some injuries have been a concern. But right now it's not really that high of a concern for me, but it's something definitely to watch going forward because they didn't play great in the first half against Wisconsin. They didn't play great late against Minnesota. That consistency that we saw against LSU, against Utah State, and against Michigan for a lot of that game just hasn't been there.
Yeah. Real quick, the overview now, looking at Penn State. I watched a lot of Penn State myself we're going into this game. Big physical team, obviously. Drew Aller is getting is looks like he's getting better. I don't see like the point. They look like a team that is like they could be on the cusp of being explosive, but they never really get to that point where they're really explosive. So like the game, they kind of keep teams in the game where they play. They had I think it was Bowling Green. They were not, they were like at home. They were struggling. They're struggling to beat Bowling Green. They have some nice plays in between the 20s, but I think the things kind of bogged down in the red zone a little bit. But what are your thoughts about the game coming up here? Because it's going to be a lot of people there, and it's going to be. I mean, a lot of USC fans, Penn State fans made the trek. A little bit disappointing as far as the outcome, because there's not a game where USC has 2 losses instead of 1. But what are your thoughts about them trying to beat Penn State here?
Well, I certainly think it's a winnable game. If they played Penn State the week after playing LSU, I'd say, based on what I saw against LSU, that defense and that offense figuring some things out, like I certainly give USC a chance, especially at home. But now, a few more weeks removed from that LSU win, the offensive line has taken some big hits just in pass protection and just like in playing. There no hits like from an injury perspective. They just haven't been as good as they were against LSU. And defensively, there have been some injuries. It's a tough spot for USC, but like to your point, offensively for Penn State, I haven't really been blown away by them.
No.
They can run the ball pretty well. Their offensive line is solid, but when Aller misses, he misses pretty badly, and they don't have one receiver that it's like, okay, that's the standout guy for them. So I do think even if USC is a little banged up, they should be able to have some success on defense. I just look at what the heck are they going to do on offense? Can they protect Miller Moss? Because against Michigan, they couldn't. And to USC's credit, they hung in that game and they still almost won on the road. So even in spite of not being able to protect Moss, USC still had a chance to win. That makes me feel like they have a good shot against Penn State. But what's the vibe of the team going to be like? Are they defeated after this Minnesota game? Just what is the depth like defensively? Who do they get back this week at practice? I'm excited or anxious to see what that all looks like. So I certainly give them a chance, but I don't know how a team that's as good as Penn State on the defensive line, how USC can beat a team like that right now in their current state. Do I give them a chance? Absolutely. But like, that's the matchup that I think is the most important in the game. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll definitely see about that. Kind of Morrissette, the Peristyle podcast, Inside Troy, all the good stuff. Make sure you catch his writing and everything like that. And you guys do a great job over there. Really appreciate you hopping on. Take care. And I'm sure you're ready for those Celtics to try to repeat as the NBA season starts. I was watching the show the other day, and you were talking about you were in traffic reading an email. Be careful, Connor.
Yes. Thank you.
Be careful, brother. We don't want nothing to happen.
Yes. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dwayne.
Take care, man.